Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let me know if you are live in the chat. Welcome to all about how to resource your self-worth. I'm super excited about this topic. Even created a little presentation for you guys today on this topic. So if you are struggling with your sense of self-worth, or you find yourself in a people-pleasing manner, finding that you're trying or living your life for others, or you feel like you've lost your sense of self, this video is for you. Welcome to the Journey Within, this November series that I'm presenting with Divine Earth School, where I'm sharing all about how to embrace your true self and what that actually means, what that actually looks like in your life. Let me know if you can hear me in the chat. Let me check it on my phone to make sure. Let's see. Let me see. Check in. Cool. Okay. Open. Making sure I can hear myself. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's dive into this topic. If you are joining me live, feel free to say hi. And I'm going to switch over to my slides, hopefully. Let me see. Let's see. Window capture. I think it's this one. I kind of want it to be the whole. Okay. And so let's start here. Cool. So welcome to today's video, all about how to resource your sense of self-worth. I'm super excited to bring this topic to you today, because I think this is so crucial, and a lot of us struggle with this in our lives. It creeps up in our lives in a multitude of different ways, and I wanted to really dive into this topic in a deeper way to give you a tool set to help you to start to improve, build your sense of self-worth, but from a different place. So let's dive into what this entails. So today's video is going to focus all on, it's not a course, sorry, I forgot to change that. But today's video will focus on how to cultivate a stronger sense of self-worth through expanding your sense of self and spirituality. So I'm Rachael Alexander. If you don't know me, hello, 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 Mosaic Souls. Rachael Alexander here, artist and Mosaic Soul mentor, aka spiritual life, wellness, and business coach here at Divine Earth School. Super excited to bring this topic to you today. So let's dive in. So what we're going to cover is, what is the self? I like to give definitions so that we're on the same page. So when I'm presenting this information, when I'm talking about it, we have the same frame of reference that we're referring to. So I'm going to define what the self is, what is worth, and what is self-worth together. Then I'm going to talk about the new reality or journey and the new call and journey that is available to you to establish a new sense of self-worth. And then lastly, I'm going to share with you a system for actualizing your new identity. Simple system. So let's dive in. Okay, so let's talk about definitions. What is worthiness, right? So when I'm talking about worth, I'm talking about value. Worth to me means value. Let me delete that. All right. Worth to me means value. So when you're thinking about, and worthiness to me means, when I looked it up on Google, good old Google, it was a sense of personal value or the quality of deserving attention or respect. That was Google's definition. Basically, to me, worthiness means feeling that you are enough, having this sense that you are enough, the enoughness is your enoughness bank is full to the brim. You're not lacking in your sense of feeling like you are enough for whatever it is in your life, right? And so let's define what the self is. The self, according to Google, is a person's essential being that distinguishes them from others, especially considered as the object of introspection or reflexive action. And to me, in simple layman's terms, the self is your sense of personhood, right? Your I-ness, that sense of me, I, what do I want? The things that, who am I? Me, your sense of identity, your personal identity. And then so self-worth to me, together, the two words together, means confidence in one's own value or abilities. This is good old Google. And it's basically self-respect, another word for self-esteem, having that sense of enoughness in your own self, in your own value, your own sense of self-worth, right? Your own sense of self-respect and value, right? So those are the definitions of what self-worth is. So let's, now that we kind of are on the same page and in the same frame of reference, when I say those terms, let's dive into the background, right? So in ancient times, we had specific roles in society, and the tribe, and the tribe. And so various roles were, whether we were mothering or, picking berries or, hunters and gatherers, whatever it was, we had certain specific roles in our society or in our tribes, right? And if we didn't fulfill them, we were considered not valuable. That's not supposed to be, that's typo, not valuable to the tribe or community for its and our own survival, right? So there was our sense of self-worth and our sense of, belonging and all that stuff was very much so built into a tribal culture, which has its beauties, right? However, it has its beauty, but it also has its limitations, right? Because we've evolved over time, things have changed, right? So as time has evolved, so has the planet's consciousness. And as a spiritual being having this human experience, there still may be roles that you've agreed to play out, like mother, daughter, father. However, because of modern technology, our survival is not dependent on traditional tribal roles. And because of the rise of consciousness and information on the planet, societal expectations no longer need to dictate your sense of self-worth in your daily life based on these roles, right? And what I mean by that basically is that not saying that you shouldn't be a part of community or that you shouldn't play out whatever roles that you are currently playing out, but we can redefine our roles and how we show up to them in our society from a different place of, instead of being from this place of survival, which I'm going to talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where we were all sort of in this, if we weren't working together to make sure that we had food, water, warmth, and rest, then we and our security and safety weren't being met, then we are basically, cast out of the tribe. We no longer had a worth to the tribe. And so therefore we had no sense of self-worth, because all of our self-worth was built upon this sort of communal energy of survival, right? But now, because of technology and information and all that stuff, many of us aren't really worried or, in a state of fear or in a state of survival per se, because our basic needs have been met. We do have, right, with our basic needs being met. We have our safety, security, food, water, warmth, rest, security, safety. We know where we're gonna, many of us, if you're watching this, many of us will know where we're gonna lay our heads at night. We know how to get water. We know where to get food, all that good stuff. So our basic needs are usually already met, right? So the tribal roles that we were henceforth, like, deriving our sense of self, we no longer need to operate out of that. So instead of having our sense of self based on where you fit, and then sort of as we evolved over time, right, we started getting into like psychological needs, right? Like feeling of prestige and feeling of accomplishment, having that sense of belongingness and love, and your love and needs being met, right? Those are still things that we need, right? On a psychological level. And then self-actualization is, achieving one's full potential, including creativity actively. So when you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this is sort of a lot of where we got our sense of self-worth, right? So if you just stay with me for a second, I'm going to break this down a little bit in a different way so that we can bring a sense of like spiritual consciousness and awareness to like where we're moving and where you can start to derive your sense of self, rather than feeling like you are at effect to life's, happenings and stuff like that, right? So the new horizon, right, that we're embarking on is when you embark on your spiritual journey, your sense of self can expand beyond just the human roles that you play. Spiritual experiences and education in spiritual principles and divine laws help you to expand your own personal identity. So no longer do you identify with just your gender role, but you can identify as spirit, source, infinite intelligence, right? And in turn, source your sense of self-worth from a new set of values and self-created expectations, right? And so instead of deriving your sense of self-worth from who you are taught to be, you start deriving your sense of self from who you truly are. So this doesn't mean that you're abdicating your roles in society. It simply means that you're approaching them from a higher state of consciousness and awareness of who you actually are, because a lot of these needs are being able to be met because of the rise of society, the rise of technology, and things of that nature, of our basic needs being met. And we have the spaciousness to start moving from a place of who we truly are rather than who we are taught to be. We're no longer in this mode of survival. We're in the greatest time in history where we have the spaciousness to actually self-actualize ourselves, right? Where we start to get a chance to explore spirituality, get a chance to actually look at what it is we want as individuals and how that fits into the collective, right? So it becomes a different state of consciousness because we no longer are affected by just the lower or just the old tribal roles that kept us bound, right? And so when I say who you actually are, what do I mean that? Who are you really? When I'm talking about who you really are, I'm talking about your spirit, your soul, your fractal of source, whatever you want to call it, child of God, whatever word resonates with you. But instead of only living from this sort of old hierarchical pyramid of needs, you start deriving your sense of self from who you really are, which is a soul and which is a spirit being having this human experience, which allows you to then resource, right? Source your sense of self-worth, not from the things that you do, the roles that you play, but who you really are, which is source, right? And that's the whole thing behind what I'm bringing to you today. So how do we do that, right? The new pathway. How do we begin to shift into our soul selves, our true selves? You begin to shift and expand your identity to beyond just your human roles and identifications. You get to know your true soul self and the many qualities that you have beyond just your humanity. Another way that you do this is tapping into the divine laws, discovering what they are, and the divine principles to understand the nature of this universe and your true nature beyond all your human conditioning, right? And you start to establish your own sense of sovereignty and new ways in which you embody and carry out the previously societally ingrained roles. So feel free to say hi in the chat. Give me a 1 in the chat if you're joining me live. Just going through this presentation because I really wanted to dive deep into this on a deeper level. So let me give you an example of what this looks like. So as a parent, you may, let's say as a parent, that's a current role that you're playing out. This is just an example. You may have thought or carried out the idea that your role is to dictate and or control your child's life until they are old enough to do it for themselves, right? This viewpoint has some validity to it. You want to provide safety and nurturing environment for your child, but it also might constrict the child as well and make you feel exhausted. So this viewpoint may have created strain on your relationship and or caused you or your child to feel that they can't be themselves or have the spaciousness enough to explore. And maybe you might be feeling like a dictator chained to a role that feels exhausting and draining, right? Instead of, however, when you shift your perception to the new identity of you being a spirit, having a human experience and having that same graciousness and spaciousness for your child, saying that my child is also a soul having this human experience, you begin to embrace a new idea and truth that your child is also a soul here to have their own experiences, and shift your role from dictatorship to a guide and a facilitator, which releases the guilt, shame, and or self-created pressure and helps move you into a person where love flows more freely and your child gets to witness their own innate faculties to make sound and wise decisions for themselves and their own journey with your guidance, of course, right? So that's just an example of shifting your identity instead of saying, okay, I'm a mom or I'm a dad and they must listen to me and or else, where it's this sort of rigidity, and it creates a rigidity within yourself as well. You get into this more free-flowing, free-loving, and allowing your child to sort of arise to their own innate intelligence, right? Same situation with wife or husband, different roles. That's a different role that you play. Instead of, maybe the old adage was wife and husband, he's meant to provide for me, or she's meant to do this and X, Y, Z. Another expansion in your viewpoint around what a husband and or wife is could then expand into, well, we're both souls having this human experience, and we're both deciding to embark upon this journey of life together. And so you give these roles different meanings. You give these roles different definitions in your life. And so by redefining these roles and your place from the inner knowing that you are a soul having this human experience, having this human experience. Okay, let me see. Okay, there we go. This role of knowing that you're a soul having this human experience, you begin to allow yourself to really maximize your potential by moving from a place of you are a soul having this human experience versus, no, I'm, Black woman, daughter, mother, all this, whether businesswoman, all this stuff. And there's nothing wrong with those roles, but redefining the roles gives you more freedom and free flow to play in your life, and to not just play, but have this sense of self-worth. Where is your sense of self-worth coming from? Instead of saying my sense of self-worth is coming from being a mother, or my sense of self-worth is coming from being a businesswoman, or my sense of self-worth is coming from being a wife or a husband. What happens when those roles no longer have such an impact, right? You're always going to be a mother, or you're always going to be, whatever role you're playing out, but these roles shift and change, right? Welcome, Anna. I'm glad it is resonating with you. Good. So these roles shift and change as we get older, as we journey through life. So instead of deriving your sense of self-worth from these roles and identification, you're shifting your sense of self-worth from the soul inner being that you truly are, because this whole human fleshly suit is very temporary. And then it starts leading you into a deeper sense of how you interact with life. It moves you into mastering sort of the law of detachment, where you're no longer attached to roles. You're no longer attached to life circumstances being a certain way, and you start to begin to traverse life with more ease, grace, and compassion and love, because you recognize that everything is temporary, everything is changing, and your sense of self-worth is no longer derived from something outside of you that you've been trained to believe that you are. It's now derived from your inner being, your inner world, your true soul self, right? And that's the whole premise behind resourcing your sense of self-worth. Instead of tongue-tied today, instead of your self-worth being from this place of, oh, I'm XYZ, all the identification markers that we're taught to be, your self-worth is actually now derived from who you actually are, which is a soul having this human experience. Let me see if I can move this back. Okay, so let's go back to this presentation and let me finish this out. So that's basically it. So rather than identifying some of these human roles you play, you identify as a spiritual being playing out these roles, right? Establishing new patterns of communication with yourself and others, right? So here's the process, right? This is sort of the process that you can utilize. If it's valuable, feel free to take a screenshot, or it'll be in the replay. You can watch this whenever. So first step of this process of resourcing your sense of self-worth is recognizing what is your current identity. This is the process of evaluating what you believe about yourself. What have you been taught about yourself? What are the roles that you're currently playing, right? And the second step is, what are the beliefs that make up that role? Evaluating the beliefs that are serving you, that you can keep, and then that are no longer serving the version of yourself that you desire to be, right? So if you're playing the role of, let's say, just going back to the mother example, what are the beliefs about that role that serve you and that no longer serve you, right? And that you can now shift and change because you're no longer moving from this place of I have to show up in this way because society says that this is what a mother does, right? You get to redefine these roles, not to the detriment of your child, right? I'm not saying to do it in a harmful way, but do it from a higher state of consciousness. And you give yourself a little bit more free play and room to move around to create better beliefs, which moves into step number 3, which is your new identity. And that's the process of establishing who you really are, getting in touch with your true soul self, right? Who are you really? If you're a soul having this human experience, what does that mean to you, right? What are characteristics of my soul? What are characteristics of being an infinite being in this temporary human experience? What are aspects of my spiritual self, right? Tapping into that. And then the 4th step is establishing and creating new beliefs, evaluating and establishing the new beliefs that serve the version of yourself that you desire to be. What are new beliefs that I can then establish within myself? What are certain divine laws and principles, right, that are useful to me, and I share a lot of that on this channel and in my programs and courses and things of that nature. But what are some of the divine laws and principles that I need to know that's going to help me tap back into my new identity, my true soul self, right? And then the last piece is embodying these new beliefs. And that's basically the process of anchoring these new beliefs in your mental, emotional, and spiritual and physical bodies and habits into your day-to-day life. What are the processes and or habits that help me to tap into my new identity, to embody this new version of me, right? Am I a more peaceful person? Do I meditate more? Do I take more time to cultivate, present moment awareness when I'm with my loved ones? Am I more, loving in my communication? Am I open and honest and present enough to be spacious for other people around me? Can I establish, what are the aspects and characteristics of who I truly am, such that my sense of self-worth isn't derived from the predetermined or pre-established roles that I've been taught to be, but who I truly am, right? Let me know if this is making sense in the chat if you're joining me live. And that's basically it for how to resource your sense of self-worth. Let me know if this is making sense in the chat. And that is all I wanted to share on how to resource your sense of self-worth. I'm hoping that that made sense because I wanted to do a deep dive on this topic because I knew that a lot of times we say, oh, well, just do X, Y, Z. But if you don't know, the definitions, and if you don't know our history and where we came from and who we are now and the freedom that we actually have, right? Good. Yay. Glad that it's making sense. Awesome. If we don't know the freedom that we have now to embody who we truly are, how can we really derive our sense of self from who we actually are if we're not tapped into who we actually are, So hopefully that makes sense. I'm glad that it's resonating. And I want to open up the floor for any questions or comments that you may have in the chat. Feel free to post them. And I'm doing some daily live coaching for the month of November for the Journey Within series that I'm doing Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. So the questions can be related to this topic, or it can be related to anything that you would like to have laser coaching on. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat. If you don't have any questions, I will pop off. And as I always say, flow with what feels good and let go of what doesn't. But I will give you guys a moment to type in the chat if you do have any questions. So, what was I going to say? Oh, do want to kind of do a recap, right? So the recap of like how to resource your sense of self-worth was basically recognizing who are you, who do you currently believe yourself to be, what belief systems make up that current belief system, who are you actually, and who do you want to be, like the new identity, establishing new beliefs, and now re-embodying or embodying these new beliefs and habitual patterns that support this new version of yourself. So that is a recap of how to resource your sense of self-worth. And it really just comes from expanding your state of consciousness, expanding your toolbox, of practices, processes, and states of being as you grow in your own spiritual journey, such that you can allow more of a powerful, confident sense of self-worth to be derived, because you're no longer looking outside of yourself. Oh, if you're in business or if you're in an influencer and stuff like that, right? If you're looking to, have external validation, you're no longer looking outside of yourself for these things. You're starting to sense, who am I? Does this matter in place of who I truly am? Awesome. Okay, cool. So glad that you guys resonate. As always, flow with what feels good, let go of what doesn't, because you are divine. You are a divine being. Your soul knows exactly what you've come to explore and experience. So as I always say, what you conceive is what you'll receive. What you expect is what you'll get. And however you feel is what will become real for you. So vibrate higher. And I will chat with you next time. Feel free to catch any of my replays below. And the last few replays that I shared was the 7 ways to self-reflect, and the first one was 10 reasons you should start a daily self-reflection process. So I will catch you guys in the next video on Monday. Have a great weekend. Peace, love, and light.